Is that the motion be agreed to. Darian Fenton.
Mr Speaker, well, this is one of the rare moments in the House over the last 3 years where I can genuinely say it's a pleasure to rise and speak in support of a government bill. This bill fixes what has been a very long-running injustice, and I want to acknowledge again the hard work and commitment of the workers in the sector, the unions, the Service and Food Workers Union and the PSA, who have been relentless in their determination to see this issue to a just conclusion. This settlement does represent a 4-year struggle. Sure, it started in 2007, but there's been 3 court cases, plus the threat of yet another court case. It has required the patience of thousands of workers who've been waiting a very long time for the issue to be resolved around their work on so-called sleepovers, which was confirmed 4 years ago by the Employment Authority as being work and requiring the payment of the minimum wage. I want to also acknowledge the role of IHC. They employ 6,500 people, half of whom do sleepovers, and they have been faced with a huge liability to the extent that they were placed in statutory management. IHC told the Select Committee that they are pleased with the settlement, along with the Service and Food Workers Union and the PSA. What the people may not know about this bill, Mr Speaker, is that the bill provides for a staged progression of payments for sleepovers, with the full minimum wage payment due on the 1st of July 2013, but IHC is funding the difference so that the workers can actually get to full minimum wage by Christmas 2012, and they've agreed to fund that difference. The unions told the Select Committee that ID Services had dealt truthfully and honestly with them, and they described them as a magnificent organisation. I endorse those comments. I also want to recognise the government's role in this settlement. They are doing the decent thing by legislating this at the 11th hour, but what it means, this legislation being enacted, means that these workers will get their back pay before Christmas. I also want to repeat again, Mr Speaker, that the bill represents a significant concession from the unions and union members. They are not getting the full entitlements that the court awarded to them. They have agreed to forego those entitlements, and they've done it in the interests of moving on and the interests of the sector and the people they care for. One of the things that the unions were very clear during the Select Committee process was to tell the members that the unions, while they're pleased with the settlement, they really now want to move on because there's unfinished business in the sector. They are interested in the long-term future of the sector, and getting the settlement behind them means that the other issues that have been brought to light during this whole process and their battle over their entitlement to be paid the minimum wage will now come to the fore. This is a low-wage sector. The workers who work in it are some of the poorest people in New Zealand and among some of the most invisible. It is primarily a job done by women, and it demonstrates the issues around pay inequity that we have in New Zealand with occupational segregation. The PSA told us about the workers that work for Spectrum Care. Now, Spectrum Care is another disability services provider which grew out of the old Māori hospital. That we used to, when we used to have residential care. Spectrum workers, interestingly, used to be paid the same as psychiatric nurses. They used to be paid the same as psychiatric nurses, but during the years of labour market deregulation, their wages have fallen further and further behind. Now, the workers are very highly skilled and dedicated, but there's no formal recognition of their skills. There are no mandatory competencies required for the job, and because it's a low-wage sector, there's been an increasing reliance on poor migrants to do the job, just as it is in aged care, because the job is unattractive for New Zealanders. It's tough, demanding work, and we shouldn't underestimate the amount of personal commitment and sheer love that goes into this work. But nor should we take it for granted, Mr Speaker. It's not only ID Services workers, as the Minister has mentioned, that will benefit from this bill. There's provision for extension to other health and disability providers and potentially other sectors funded by the Crown. I'm pleased that we are debating this bill, and it's the last piece of business before the adjournment debate and Parliament rises. It is something to celebrate. I celebrate for the members of the union who battled long and hard and faced down a very expensive court process, and they had the odds stacked against them. I celebrate for the people they care for, and they care for them genuinely with love. This is one of the great moments in this parliament, and it's a good way to end this parliamentary term.
Point of order, the Honourable Simon Powell.
Mr Speaker, just noting the time, I seek leave for the House to sit beyond 6 p.m. this evening to complete the business outlined in the urgency motion.
Is there any objection to that course of action being followed? There is none. Dr Paul Hutchison.